Okay, I swear this will come back later. Thomas and Friends needs no introductory. It ran for 24 seasons between 1984 to 2021 and had 1 theatrical movie and 14 direct-to-video movies. Wait, shit, that's an introductory. It was based on the book series The Railway Series by Reverend Wilbert Awdry, first debuting in 1942 and ending its first run in 1962. Can't forget the 1951 classic Henry the Green Engine, or as I like to call it, Henry the Epic Gamer. Smoke and ashes spouted from his tunnel. They went all over the bridge. All over the boys who were black as... The first adaptation released in 1953, and it's worth noting that the original book stories were anthological, and this adaptation was based on the short story The Sad Story of Henry from the first book, 3 Railway Engines, and is a holy grail of lost media, but not even really a holy grail. In slang, holy grail implies that it's findable by the off chance. A word does not exist for how rare this pilot is, because it's a rare instance where it's reasonable to believe it will never be found despite its connection to a beloved IP. This is because it was a live broadcast with train models. It was a disaster according to the press. The franchise in its prime was highly acclaimed for its production values, and using modeled trains, you're not gonna get everything on the first take. Allegedly, in this 50s live adaptation, trains went off the tracks and like fingers and shit were noticeable, and the narrator ain't too good at improvising. Oh no! Dear James flipped over and squished that kitty cat. What are you supposed to say in that type of scenario? It was also the 50s, so it's not like you could just record the live broadcast at home. Now, I don't know exactly how they filmed this thing, but it's safe to assume since it was a live broadcast in the 50s, it most likely utilized kinoscoping, aka a long-ass tube hooked up to a broadcast system. Further, aka not physical film that could also be destroyed. On top of the fact that it was broadcasted by the BBC, which is notorious for not caring about media preservation, most Doctor Who lost media is a product of it being a BBC show that debuted in '63, meaning that most likely if this live performance adaptation was well received, it would probably still be lost, but its bad reception makes it all the more desired. Coincidentally, after I started writing this in June of 2025, what is rumored to be the model for character Gordon in the 1953 adaptation has turned up, which is a really cool find if true, considering the impossible to recover nature of the disastrous live broadcast. This broadcast is so notorious that there's tons of fan-made reenactments of it, the most notable being this user, Sodor's NW's R. Steam, who did a great job with the precisely shitty recreation with no intention of deception.
But look, it's raining hard. Henry won't like that. Soon, Henry comes to a tunnel.
Awdry disliked this adaptation structure on top of the disastrous live broadcast, but that didn't stop audiobooks on vinyl from being made between 1957 to 1979. But in the 80s, this vintage book series was given life to a new generation, and a life grander than ever, thanks to documentarian Britt Allcroft, who coincidentally came across the book series in 1979 when researching locomotives for a documentary. So it was her mission to get an adaptation of this somewhat forgotten book series from the 50s off the ground, and she was correct in her assumption that it would make a great show for youngsters. Hell, around the same time, the original The Railway Series book series was even revived by Awdry's son, Christopher, in 1983. Coincidentally, around the time of the Thomas and Friends test pilot Down in the Mine, a pilot that was never publicly released until 2025 by the Mattel toy company that owns the entire IP, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Railway Series, not long after Britt Allcroft's death on Christmas of 2024. The Down in the Mine pilot was a holy enough holy grail for the owners to give it the restoration it deserved and widely release it, but regardless, this adaptation took off. The original Thomas and Friends series was well made enough to appeal to young kids and be very respected for its quality craftsmanship by adults. It apparently peaked internationally in the late 90s and early 2000s, but is an 80s classic only to the British, Thomas's home country. Thankfully, the late Wilbur Awdry did get to see his property become a smash hit for generations later, Awdry passing away in 1997. However, the quality throughout the franchise history is debatable.
What else did they do wrong? Oh yes! They defy the laws of realism! Look at this! The engines can jump and turn around without the need of a turntable. They use wheels as hands and legs. They bounce off around the nearest track. The engines have no side rods, no crew members. Rolling stock, like coaches and trucks, can move on their own. Make obstacle courses, anything! But it's not just defying the laws of realism, oh no. They also defy the laws of physics too!
My fellow Americans and fools, as a nation, we must segregate the Republicans from the Democrats in the Thomas the Tank Engine fandom. Even though the engines are canonically British, they will stop using the model trains made for 4-year-olds for their own political gain and exploitation, and they will be taken care of. God bless America and John F. Kennedy for leaving this lifetime supply of Cuban cigars behind. Oh, and we're gonna let the 4th plane hit the White House this time.
The first 11 seasons from 1984 to 2007 are highly acclaimed. The later half, using CGI and its 2021 animated series, not so much. But regardless, even to this day, Thomas and Friends rocks a monopoly on the children's train media and model toys economy. What is this, the 1920s? How can I possibly play with this train model? They don't have faces! So, because basic economics, of course there had to be an occasional attempt to scoop up some of Thomas's monopoly share. Personally, I remember seeing promotional material for Chuggington when it was new and being pissed off that they were ripping off Thomas. Yeah, you weren't fooling me at 4 years old, you punk bitch.
I like singing. I like dancing.
I like trains.
Now, kids like trains, and a very special type of kids especially like trains. So I don't think it's fair to call any preschool show with a train in it a Thomas ripoff, but there is one other exception, and is the only reason I'm bringing all this Thomas lore up, and that is JJ the Jet Plane.
Say, look at this. I've been cleaning out my nest, and I found an old book of my poetry.
How did it happen? A $2.5 million aircraft, checked, double-checked, mothered. An instrument almost as precise as the human body. How did it happen? Was it an act of God?
Now, I know it stars planes and not trains, but just look at it.
Look at Barbie. What a scary bitch.
Per usual, let's address the elephant in the room.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
This is probably the most notorious unintentionally disturbing kids show. It's not the scariest, but it's probably the most well-known for the wrong reasons. Most kids shows that can classify as unintentionally disturbing fade into obscurity because it's scary to children and, they're not gonna remember it positively. Or, it's gonna do really poorly in ratings or sales or whatnot because it appeals to nobody. Not JJ though. Anyone who saw JJ back in the day remembers him for the wrong reason. Look, it's not a super well-known show, but I think way more people know about it than most things it could be compared to.
Piggle, that light was very important on that pole.
Now, I personally never saw this show when I was in the target demographic. It got canceled when I was like 1, but you want to know what I did see when I was like 12? The JJ-themed kiddie ride. You know, those like bouncy vehicle amusement rides that like take quarters and can fit toddlers? They're in like malls and grocery stores and Chuck E. Cheese and whatnot, or at least they used to. I think they're kind of dead in the iPad age, if not mistaken. Shoot, that's my last quarter. Personally, I am quite nostalgic for the R.G. Mitchell's Fun Carousel kiddie ride. Like, look at this damn thing. It has every toy known to man represented, and a pedophile clown, and a ripoff of the dog chair from Pee-wee's Playhouse, and a ripoff of a Thomas character. But I'd hate to be nostalgic for these. Yeah, JJ the Jet Plane got 3 of them. The collection consists of JJ in 03, Snuffy in 04, and Lena in 07. So I guess the designs were appealing enough for toddlers to want to ride them. And when I saw the JJ one in like a shopping plaza I only went to like once, well, I just had to figure out what the hell that was. Not actually knowing it was a licensed character ride. Like, it had to have some commercial success unless it was like an industry plant of a franchise, but having industry plant status is something. JJ terrified an entire generation, and not in a good way, like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Now, over the years, I've seen a ton of jokes targeted at the expense of the Thomas and Friends character anatomy, and I get why some people would find it creepy.
It's morning time, Thomas!
I touch you while you sleep.
Now, me personally, at any age, I never did. Like, yeah, it'd be some Freddy Krueger hallucination shit in real life, but you know, it's toys or a cartoon. It's not disturbingly realistic. It's odd if you apply reality to it, but it's for fucking 4-year-olds. Settle down, Beavis. JJ the Jet Plane, however, the characters have human skin and human faces. Yeah, the human skin is where a line needs to be drawn. Personally, I find this character anatomy way more disgusting than scary. Like, yeah, it's unpleasant either way, but I'm gonna throw up, not piss my pants. Difference there. Now, I couldn't find any info on what drugs the team were on when they decided to Frankenstein flesh onto vehicles, but it's very safe to assume that it was a product of Thomas plagiarism with no consideration of the appeal. And it is as basic as they're not that human, you know, they don't have skin or multi-dimensional human attributes. They're not trying to be realistic. In JJ, it's not helped that there's like skin textures, and the skin isn't just a single shade of Caucasian. There's like minuscule facial features like lips and blush and eyelashes. You'd expect this type of design from a Mad Magazine parody or something, not the actual designs. The adult designs are even worse since they have more structural attributes because, you know, the baby fat is out of their cheeks. Plus, most of the trains were given like circular or rectangular ends, so there's a simple shape that allows a simple face that can be latched onto. It's not a realistic bald human head. In JJ, the way that the faces are attached to metal is some like Wes Craven jumping out of the TV horror type shit. Yeah, bingo. It kind of gives off the vibe that the humans were like forced into vehicles and they're actively trying to escape. Like the faces are hanging off the fucking metal, like they're squishedly squeezed in there like a can of refried beans. Actually, it's like Angela Anaconda or Gaither's Pond, you know, 2 other poorly designed animated series roughly from the same era that had an emphasis on realistic faces. JJ was created by David Mitchell. Mitchell was a businessman, so he'd fly a lot and tell his son stories about airplanes, cause kids like airplanes, vrr. Then he figured, why not make stories about them so he could make something for his son? David Mitchell also founded JJ's original parent company, Kid Quest, which I'm pretty sure is defunct or liquidated or whatever. Not to be confused with the self-proclaimed Museum of Play or Quest Kids, the fantasy board game, or Brain Quest. You know, those stupid-ass, pointless busywork books that they tried to hype up as some, like, cool foot prize. Hey, parents! You want your kids to do homework during the summer? Your kids will definitely call you on the holidays when they're big and strong. David Mitchell had no prior experience in showbiz, but he did have experience in biz. First, he was a Methodist pastor, then he was the president of a medical cancellation company. So, essentially, he managed to make a corporate slop pilot despite being independent. Bro think he vizzy pop? So what happens when a guy that had no experience in entertainment or any form of art tries to make a show from scratch? Well, you get these designs. The fact that this got past quality control was a part of the fact that Mitchell was the quality control. The non-artist, the non-cartoonist, the non-entertainer of any kind. The creator was like literally just somebody's dad and nothing else besides former reverend. Somebody's dad who probably didn't even mind his boring office job. It's not like he's ever gone on record saying that he hated being a medical consolation company president. You know, he didn't make JJ to get out of the hood or anything. So I guess he was motivated to make a show to entertain his child, but he had so little of a vision, but he did it anyway because he had a medical president salary. He could fund a show because his salary allowed it. So with an extremely vague idea of stories with airplanes, he probably just turned to what was cool with the kids involving vehicles, and that was Thomas the Tank Engine. Being an exception to most shows with extremely vague ideas don't get made. Like, why did Butch Hartman's Uncle Duck pilot not go anywhere? Because the entire premise is that Uncle Duck is crazy.
And don't do anything crazy.
Me? Crazy? No way! Let's do something crazy!
That's a one-sentence premise. It's a show with episodes. We need a ton of stories out of these characters. Just kidding, of course. I can't disrespect the legendary 40-second long Uncle Duck pilot. But 90% of the time, if you only have an extremely vague idea of a show, it's probably never even getting a pilot of any kind ever made. One sentence isn't gonna persuade investors that are gonna be reasonably stingy. But, baby show, but with airplanes, only got made because the creator was the inevitably necessary investor, and you cannot convince me otherwise. This is what happens when someone with zero artistic credibility of any kind in their adulthood makes a show. The internet was new back then. It's not like he could present the concept for the whole wide world to see to secure crowdfunding. Mr. Enter, did the kids or adults hit the Twin Towers in the Growing Around universe?
Sorry, HW, I can't play right now. I have to blow up the World Trade.
JJ has what is technically considered a pilot series, similar to the Simpsons Tracy Ullman Show shorts or the Fairly Odd Parents Oh Yeah cartoon shorts, which of course were created by Butch Hartman, aka the creator of Uncle Duck. Yeah, baby! He's fucking crazy! JJ's first home media release would be a 4-story anthology named after the first story, JJ's First Flight, released in December of 1994, just in time for Christmas. Guys, wouldn't it be crazy if Uncle Duck bought JJ the jet plane as a Christmas present? The success of this home video would be followed with 2 more anthology pieces, Old Oscar Leads the Parade and Tracy's Handy Hideout, as well as The Best of JJ the Jet Plane, a compilation that featured 10 cherry-picked stories. Except each of the 3 anthologies has 4 stories, so they made a compilation but excluded 2 episodes. You know, I get it, VHSs didn't have a ton of storage, but still. It's like making a Miss Lauryn Hill Greatest Hits album, even though she only has 1 solo studio album. Oh wait, that got made. The pilot trilogy was obviously done with models, just like a certain very cheeky engine. But it's actually original because the protagonist is red. The stories are also narrated, which I know is extremely standard for preschool shows. That's fine, but it's not really helping the plagiarism allegations. But most notably, the original Railway series books were anthological, consisting of 4 to 5 short stories, each focusing on a different character. That's why they were called The Railway, as in the Whole Train Squad, and the show was titled Thomas and Friends. This emphasis on short-form plot lines was continued in the TV adaptation. There's a lot of variation depending on like the region or era or whatever, but regardless, at its core, Thomas has always had short-form, character-focused stories. Now obviously, Thomas didn't invent any of that, but everything regarding its presentation and formatting is present in JJ the Jet Plane. If you've seen Thomas, then you've seen JJ's pilot series unintentionally. This is the JJ franchise at its most unoriginal. The models are just stuck on these unnecessarily hammy expressions. They look more like a corpse being dragged around, and said corpse is also electrified and taking a mean dump. They smile so much. It's like the Smile Dog creepypasta from 2009. Its serial killer energy is because of the lack of energy. Like, all of you, shut your fucking mouth, and not because they're talking. The CGI series would be more disgusting, but this is the more scary part if you ask me. The title cards of each episode in both iterations are just like a singular plain, almost always JJ just smiling at nothing. Big Jake's birthday surprise? Oh really? I couldn't tell because Big Jake isn't visible in the title card. What's even the point of having a title card if there's nothing specific to indicate what the episode is beyond the title? And they just use the same JPEG like almost every time. But most people don't remember this pilot trilogy of 12 short stories. But with any show that uses like models or puppets, it raises the question, well, what happened to them? The whereabouts of the models are unknown, but are commonly assumed to be possessed by the creator. And as we confer from it being a pilot trilogy, it was a successful pilot trilogy. Because I guess it was similar enough to what was highly acclaimed, and it wasn't too scary for kids, or perhaps something else.
I think my initial reaction was panic.
But just 18 months later, JJ is winning rave reviews in parenting magazines around the country. It's won prestigious awards from parenting groups, and it has its own internet homepage site.
Yeah, something tells me this only sold well because it was acclaimed by the 1994 equivalent of shallow soccer moms on Facebook. It just really got that recommendation slot in this month's issue of Bad Parenting Propaganda magazine. Those critics loved it. Yeah, because Mr. and Mrs. No SpongeBob in this household have a grasp on reality. The success of this pilot trilogy managed to get the attention of TLC, aka The Learning Channel. In the 90s and 2000s, TLC wanted to compete with PBS Kids, Noggin, and Playhouse Disney. Specifically, in 1992, TLC would launch their Ready, Set, Learn block, which would run until 2008. And I guess the company thought JJ was going to be the next hot thing, or they were really desperate for any preschool shows to greenlight, creating a CGI series under the same name in 1998. Roughly 4 years after the release of the first pilot episode. And oh, come on, they made the protagonist blue?
But he is just copying a fake rocket ship blueprint designed by someone else. Seems more like monkey see, monkey do than using creative energy, if you ask me.
The CGI series, even if it had a smidge more of an identity, is still a Thomas ripoff nonetheless. Even at the expense of being more repulsive. The stories were still narrated, but the narrator was less crucial to the CGI storytelling. So the characters actually began to speak, so now they could move their mouths. Fantastic. I imagine the CGI was done to save money because that's what actual Thomas started doing in 2009. But another elephant in the room is that the voice acting is atrocious.
We're on vacation tomorrow, and Easy O'Malley promised we could all go to the fair. I can't wait to eat all the cotton candy there is. Every color.
And I can't wait to go on all the rides.
Hey guys, are you all talking about that Rivertown Fair again?
Oh, sorry, Brenda, but we're so excited.
I know, me too.
The majority of the voices were done by Mary Kay Bergman, Sandy Fox, and Debbie Derryberry. Derryberry would replace Bergman after a firearm suicide in 1999. But all three of these main voice actresses specialize in high-pitched voices, whether it be child characters of both sexes or just annoying girl characters. But just about every voice besides the small amount of adult male characters have ridiculously over-the-top voices. Now, I know it's a cartoon, but the fact that the majority of the main cast are so over-the-top and so high-pitched, it gets annoying really quickly. Nothing against the main voice actresses, Bergman especially was a legend gone too soon. They're fantastic at high-pitched voices. So in case you didn't want to vomit or piss yourself already, your ears are going to be bleeding too. All the voices being done by the same two people is fine if it's a complete shit post or those two have like a ton of of vocal diversity, and the three main voice actresses here do have vocal diversity, except they were clearly instructed to have very similar voices for every character. This is a 100% on the showrunners and not the voice actresses. But so many annoying girl voices get so irritating very quickly. Now, what's the central premise of this show? Well, I don't even fucking know. It's like life lessons at an airport, I guess? Thomas was also a series oriented around simple life lessons. It's undeniably a product of a basic premise. The trains are trains, they move things. Something goes wrong, a lesson is learned. The fact that it was willing to be subtle about life sucking sometimes, and there's not often a conflict resolution, is an aspect I really appreciate as an adult. Formulaic, sure, but it's the product of a job position of the characters because they're sentient vehicles. What do the planes do for a living? Like I get there's younger planes such as JJ and friends trying to learn to fly really good, I guess. Every episode is just like a random conflict that can happen in any show. You know, most like baby shows have like core values, you know, educational objectives. I don't know what in the ass this show is supposed to teach. It's so vague. JJ is by no means as bad as like Little Clowns of Happy Town, but at least something like that I can identify what the core values are, encouraging positivity and unity.
I gloom the wheels off the scooters.
Not that you can't shove as many morals in there as possible, but there should still be like a primary educational objective. Like, Lazy Town, I think, is a super well-written preschool show. It mainly prioritizes common sense of healthy lifestyle choices. You know, it doesn't get too specific with science and whatnot, but a lot of the conflicts often involve subsequent smaller lessons like speaking up for yourself, or return lost things to others, or don't jump to conclusions. So there's still educational diversity while having a main educational purpose throughout every episode to not be too attention deficit while teaching. JJ just does whatever and it amounts to so little substance. Back in my day, before each show on Noggin, there would be what's called a curriculum board, an informative disclaimer to the parents as to what the substance of the upcoming programming was.
When kids play with Little Bill, they develop their emotional skills, explore family dynamics, and learn how to be an all-around good friend, like Little Bill.
Now, JJ never aired on Noggin, but PBS would release these learning goal sheets which indicate the primary objective of each program. I don't know exactly when they started releasing these frequently, but regardless, I can't find any proof of what JJ's educational objective actually was. And I don't mean fan interpretation, I mean the publisher's interpretation. And that's just a testament to how uneducational the show actually is. There's so little of a point for the characters to be planes in most instances. I'm not saying it has to be logical, it's a cartoon for 3-year-olds, but why do the conflicts have to involve aviation? And Thomas, the objective is to teach kids tough shit, kiddo. JJ is clearly afraid to make the viewers afraid, so it can't communicate that life sucks, so the lessons are hardly lessons. That element was poorly copied, assuming that was the point. This applies to just about every episode. Let's look at some. Snuffy's first day of school. The episode is trying to do something with, like, academic anxiety. Snuffy is afraid to go to school, but then he runs away, but is found by mentor character Old Oscar and decides he has nothing to be worried about, I guess. But why'd he stop worrying? If there was any severity to the life lessons, it would actually show him at school being worried over something. Is it separation anxiety from his parents? Well, no, the planes don't have parents. Is he getting bullied? Is he gonna fail a test?
What's the matter, little guy? Tomorrow will be a great day for you. You're gonna be going to the Michael O'Terry School. That's where Tracy and I went when we were little. But I'm scared of...
Oh, okay, he's afraid because exposition dump with zero severity. Fantastic. That's really fucking down to earth for youngsters. Thomas's severity is bare minimum, it's for babies, but it is willing to be severe. And as somebody who watched the original show at a young age, probably the most famous story from the Railway series is the sad story of Henry. It was famous enough to be chosen for the stupid-ass live pilot and a vinyl record, and to be the 3rd episode of season 1, or sorry, series, because it's British. If you know the plot, you can probably remember it just by looking at a single book illustration or frame from its adaptation. In case you need a refresher, Henry is left to die in a tunnel because he didn't want to work in the rain. Actions have consequences, a life lesson with no happy ending. Simple but effective, but not disturbing, but not sugar-coated either. Perfectly balanced as all things should be. And he does get let out of the tunnel literally in the next episode. He's not actually left there to die for the entire show. That's a common misconception, which I don't blame people for mistaking. Most of us probably haven't seen the show since we were like 4, unless you're a resident of Super Origami Kingdom.
And do you all want to know how long the intro is? It's 1 minute and 27 seconds!
I thought intros were meant to be 30 seconds long! To people who make intros on YouTube, listen up! Intros should be shorter and outros should be longer so that you can jump into the content faster! Got it?
JJ's lessons have so little substantiation that they're presented in the most happy-go-lucky bug juice nature as possible. The episode JJ's Winter Parade involves JJ trying to throw a light parade, but the weather delays it, so the town decides it should be an ice-themed parade. So is it like trying to teach the weather, or like give back to your friends or family? Well, only 2 of the seasons are acknowledged, technically. Well, no, it's not teaching anything, it's just noise. Like, surely if you wanted to teach the concept of respecting one another, they'd have somebody be disrespectful. Like how Thomas had a handful of antagonistic figures such as Diesel 10, Spencer, and the Troublesome Trucks. They're not really flat-out villains that are heartless! But, you know, they're just kind of like crew members that are kind of a dickhead sometimes. But for conflicts like these, what's even the point of saying that actions have consequences if you're gonna pussy out like a bitch and hardly show consequences? There's zero effort in putting the characters in scenarios that could actually be, like, shocking for its target demographic. Like, how the fuck did you forget that life can be scary when trying to teach life lessons? In all seriousness, some of this show's content came after 9/11, in which tons of media, especially children's media, edited out any references to anything resembling the World Trade Center or vehicles flying and crashing, even if it does something as harmless as an establishing shot in the NYC and Home Alone 2 Lost in Trump Tower. So, mainly towards the end of the run, post 9/11, maybe they were a little too cautious, and the very possibility of the team being a little too sensitive over flying vehicle injuries kind of derails the morals, at least in presentation visuals, to substantiate the lesson. In Tracy's Candy Catastrophe, Tracy has a candy obsession, and she has a nightmare where everything she touches turns to candy. Then she wakes up and realizes that too much candy is bad. But no, we can't have a conflict the fault of our own character's life choices. That could remind our kids that life can be scary. We don't want kids to be scared. Well, despite the fact that they're ripping off a show famous for its frightening for baby show standard moments. Just about every episode is like this, just random life lessons with an unwillingness to demonstrate the bare minimum of difficulties from consequences. For the actual characters, there's a large emphasis on role models, so the characters can be divided roughly by their age category. And of course, the role model characters, the adults, just step in to say something that makes the bare minimum of conflict even more sunshine and rainbows. For the kids, there's JJ himself, the everyman with like no flaws whatsoever. From what I could get my hands on, there is like one episode where JJ has a flaw of having nightmares. A lot of the time he's just there to help resolve the issue despite not having any issues of his own, which is just unrealistic. Like, obviously, Thomas the Tank Engine got focus stories in Thomas and Friends, but, you know, that's because they were willing to have a protagonist with good and bad qualities. Then there's JJ's girl copy-paste Tracy, who's smart and reads books because pink and girl is pink. She's got like the Donald Trump spray tan.
Hello, you people know a lot about trucks.
Yo, yo, yo!
China. Bing, bing, bong.
Snuffy is just Millhouse and has a fat fucking poop nose. I don't even know what the fuck Herky is supposed to do. He just spazzes out like an idiot with his exaggerative accent.
Turn on the TV, they hit the Pentagon! They hit the fucking Pentagon!
And easily has the worst voice in the whole show.
Well, I can be alone to try out this dancing stuff for myself. Let's see, I need some music. La 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 la.
Just a filler friend on the group. In the pilot series, he was actually an adult, judging by his facial structure and size, but I guess this was changed to have a fourth group friend member.
Okay, Herky, you can close your mouth now.
As for the adult characters, why is the lesbian so realistic? There is one live-action human part of the main ensemble, Brenda Blue, the town's mechanic, even though she wears a red hat sometimes, so hurry up and pick a favorite color, lady, goddamn. There's Big Jake, JJ's mentor, Savannah, Tracy's mentor. This could have been one character. At least there was some thought to have a positive role model for both genders, but they're still the same character. Old Oscar is an elderly role model, and I don't think his age is ever actually important to anything. It's just a design choice. He can fly around like fine. This isn't a respect your elders character. There are also some secondary residents of Terrytown, the main setting, including Revan Evan, a fire truck, and his cousin, Tuffy, a tow truck. Self-explanatory roles and stories. There are also some very minor but other live-action characters, including Mrs. Blue, Brenda's mother, Easy O'Malley, the founder and retired manager of the airline service I guess JJ and friends are a part of, as well as the rest of the O'Malley family, including Grumpy, a painter, Pierre, a comical French relative, and Tex, a comically Texan relative. Hawk to spit on that. The family even got wooden figure toys. Yeah, kid, you wanna play with a wooden Tony Soprano? I'm so glad we got adult characters that will just maybe sometimes step in and not enforce any form of discipline of any kind. JJ was also one of those preschool shows that had separate international versions for other English-speaking countries. This American English-speaking show having a British English dub. This is often done to accommodate language development or cultural representation. For example, the worth of a dime or a language function unique to a country will be accommodated for international releases. Probably most famously, Sesame Street has a ton of international re-edits and international reimaginings that are still in English, but not as distinctly American as the original, such as Canadian Sesame Street, which removes useless American lessons for its demographic, and reimaginings like Canada's Sesame Park or the UK and Ireland's Sesame Tree. Hell, even Peppa Pig had an American dub, which is mostly lost media because it was super short-lived.
Good night, Peppa.
Good night, Mommy.
Good night, George. And good night, Mr. Dinosaur.
When George goes to bed, Mr. Dinosaur is tucked in with him.
And what do you know? All the fucking iPad babies are pronouncing it as zebra and tomato. It's also common for only certain characters to be accommodated for international distribution under the same language that it was shot in. For example, Lazy Town has a British dub which only alters the puppet character voices.
This post box is mine, and this triangle sign.
Not every British preschool show has an American dub and vice versa. So if it was justified from an educational or production standpoint, it kind of just varies from example to example, show for show, you know? I actually really don't think Thomas needed one, besides some, like, a couple slang words, I guess. Like, I've never used the word cheeky outside of describing Thomas in reference to the show's own songs. In JJ's British dub, the only notable differences are the alteration of the narrator and Brenda Blue being played by a completely different British actress.
Calling JJ. Calling JJ the jet plane.
JJ, please come to the workshop to be winterproofed.
Now, as an American that legitimately cannot name more than 5 British prime ministers, I really don't think JJ's British dub was justified from a production standpoint. It only has a British narrator and 1 British lady. If the show was more educational about cultures or language or monetary skills, I'd understand, but again, JJ has no core values. Obviously, the animation is gonna be disgusting, but surely it could at least do its job as an educational series, no matter how mediocre. But no, this is worse than I initially gave it credit for. It sucks at basic education too, which is a death sentence for a show with a demographic this young. TLC would continue to air the show for 1 more season. Season 1 of the CGI series lasting between November to December of '98, with Season 2 lasting between January '99 to March 2000. But then they were done. But the TLC series managed to get the attention of its competitor, PBS Kids, a far more common free-to-watch non-profit television network, meaning that JJ would begin to terrify more kids than ever. But shit, I guess it was doing something right. Because in 2001, the series would continue between June to July, and that's where the series ended for the moment. Until 2003, where the franchise received yet another dub, but this time a Christian dub. And what I mean by Christian dub is that they started lazily nailing in Christian messaging to the show, which still doesn't hold itself accountable for its lack of core values. Because again, it was created by a former Methodist pastor, and it's never really been confirmed if he lost his faith and regained it or not, but regardless, at some point he thought Christian messaging wouldn't be appropriate for the property, but no, then he changed his mind.
Hey, I know. Let's go sin. Yeah, I like.
Now, I don't think it's fair to call all religious media besides VeggieTales exploitative, but I think it's fair to call the majority of Christian media besides VeggieTales bad. Well, because it is.
I may look happy on the outside, but I'm not very happy on the inside.
How come you're not happy on the inside?
Well, I feel like no one loves me.
Jesus loves you, so do I.
Thank you, Gary. I feel happy on the inside, but how do I stay happy on the inside?
Play.
Look at this Eastern Orthodox Christian icon created during the Byzantine Empire that was brought to Venice in 1319, depicting Mary and the Son of God. Why is baby Jesus just a smaller human and not a baby? But if its heart is in the right place, then it'll be obvious. But if not, then it'll be even more obvious. And it's quite obvious this Christian dub was only designed to exploit Christian audiences by now reinventing it as a religious show.
JJ and Snuppy were on their way to town to pick up some vegetables for the big meal. They were going to learn to be very thankful for God's help and for each other.
In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a more blatantly exploitative Christian kids show than JJ the Jet playing the Christian dub. Like, at least God rocked its industry plant donkey diarrhea. It's a dub, so they just randomly inserted religious references into the narrative and apparently removed instances of characters wishing, as well as words like gosh and golly. From what I could get my hands on, the Christianity is incredibly vague and the narration is the main thing with alterations. It almost always has to do something with God, and I mean literally just the existence of Christian God. There's no Son or Holy Spirit, just the Father, which is odd, because why have one without the three? How do you make a Christian show and hardly mention Jesus? Even Treasure Attic was a more Christian show than this, and we don't talk about Treasure Attic, if you know what I'm saying. No Matthew, no Mark, no Luke, no John, no story, no motive, no reason, and no background checks. The Christian dubs are super hard to come by, mainly because the episodes aren't labeled as Christian dubs. You know, it doesn't have that type of fanfare where folks will go out of their way to distinguish which version it is when archiving. This ain't Dragon Ball in South America. Hell, most archivists probably aren't even aware of the alterations because it's fucking JJ the Jet Plane. Why are you even giving it the time of day? It's a cheaply made Christian edit of a non-Christian show that was atrocious to begin with. From what I could get my hands on, the British dubs are even harder to find than the Christian dubs. And no, there was no British Christian version, to my knowledge at least. In fact, if you happen to own a DVD with a Christian name, burn that shit and put it on Internet Archive. It may not seem like much on the surface, but you physically possess rare media. The Christian dubs would be released straight to video between 2003 to 2010 with such episode compilations as Persevere with God, God's Awesome Design, God's Premise. What happened to Jesus? Fantastic Faith, You Are Special, Forgiveness and Understanding. Hell, they were such lazy pieces of shit, they didn't even bother to change the episode titles with the Christian dubs. They do reference biblical passages on the back of the DVDs to indicate the message, but surely they could have changed the episode titles at the very least. Like, that's how little of a shit they gave about making it a Christian show. What happened to 3/4 for the Lord, punk? And, by the way, who wrote the fucking Railway series? Reverend Wilbert Audrey. But you want to know what those books didn't have? Religious teachings. I mean, like, I guess you could argue some of the morals were, like, religion influence since, like, what the author dictated as right and wrong, but at the end of the day, there weren't any explicit Christian themes. The Railway series was created by a literal reverend, and despite crediting himself with the hipper Rev abbreviation, acknowledging his Christian title, but he knew these anthological life lessons about trains didn't need Christianity to get the point across, which is a very respectable stance to take to make something for general audiences despite being legally a religious authority. So if the reverend author of the thing you're ripping off thought Christian messaging in this property would be pointless, evidented by the lack of Christianity, then I don't know what screams that a JJ Christian dub was pointless. But as the Christian dubs were being released, I guess JJ did well in syndication enough for a specialized Season 4 that is not technically a sequel or reboot. JJ's Mysteries would air one season between September to November of 2005. So what does it mean by mysteries? Is it Sherlock Holmes Hellspawn Plain Edition?
My deduction skills as a detective tell me he has quite possibly never had sex.
I would not really call this a mystery-solving approach to utilizing a pre-existing ensemble. There's some, like, MacGuffin hunting, I guess. But the title is completely misleading. It's not like a preschool detective show that teaches, like, problem-solving and deduction skills and whatnot. That would make too much sense. The mysteries that JJ solves in this era are just exposition dumps of basic science or mathematics. But each episode is titled The Mystery of Blank, and blank includes stuff like plants, weather, size and shape, water. So what is it, fucking Bill Nye the Science Guy without that epic beat drop? There were 10 mysteries to solve, but given that the episodes were still 11 minutes, half of the show was devoted to a mystery and an additionally repurposed episode from the first 3 seasons. Part of me thinks PBS only agreed to make a mystery-oriented revival if it provided more substance and distinct objectives. So I guess now the show in its 4th technical season became disturbing kindergarten PowerPoint slideshows. The Mystery of Plants is just a scavenger hunt for vegetables. The Mystery of Water is just a stupid-ass use your imagination episode. The Mystery of Size and Shape is just name the fucking shape, you fucking idiot. The revival would also introduce 2 new main characters, Montana, an international explorer, and Lena, the racist stereotype.
Oh, Tio Oscar, I've been away for so long. Do you think everybody will be happy to see me?
Okay, well, I'm joking, but her voice and accent is atrocious. It sounds like you're, like, making fun of your 9th grade Spanish teacher at the lunch table. That's her voice on, ironically. You know,
hola, wonderful Hola chicos, como estas? Hola soy Dora, you know, all that shit.
Un dinosaurio is out there! Lena, why do you think a dinosaur is after you?
Which is perfectly fine to encourage multiculturalism and teach the basics of foreign languages, especially one common in the US as a second language. But Lena was just an incredibly overdone approach to this type of subject matter in American media. Like, why the fuck should I watch this grotesque talking plane show to learn Spanish when I could just watch Handy Manny instead? Dude, fuck, man. Dora is a better option than this. I am applauding Dora the Explorer. Fucking Dora. You know, that punk bitch misbehaved at Burger King and got grounded. You know, I was pretty surprised that Nina got a kiddie ride. She's not even like the main female plane of lore. But I guess she has a bow, and that's more feminine, so little girls can swing low sweet chariot on the wonderful Chica plane. It's commonly assumed that there was an intended second season of JJ's Mysteries consisting of another 10 mysteries. There were 3 characters that were exclusive to the die-cast toy line Wooden Adventure System. According to fan recollections, there was allegedly a website poll in 2003 as to what characters they should add into the show, as it was beginning its revival state with JJ's Mysteries. The 4 options were Montana, who won, Truckee, Solar, and Captain Bob. Although it is very much possible that these other 3 characters were only designed for toys, given that that's their only form of media. Or they could have been planned for use at a later date that never got to happen. JJ's Mysteries ended before their episodes could have been finished, but not before the toys could be released. Yeah, that's right, during the PBS revival era, it got a surprising amount of toys. These are also similar to Thomas's long-running wooden die-casts. There are even location sets under the line, including the Tonkin Airport Control Tower, Revan Evans Firehouse, Herky's Hangar, the Big Hangar, the Kids Hangar, and the Easy O'Malley Barn. There's also what's called a touch-and-go starter set, which I guess has some sort of launch feature with a runaway water tower. And of course, the wooden dolls of the human characters, which even include JJ's Lore's Glupshido equivalents like Brenda's mom. There was also a deluxe gift set that included the big hangar, an exclusive storage case, and the whole main squad plus Tuffy. The sculpting on the die-cast is too damn accurate, which is a bad thing because it's disturbing. It's really giving that corpse taking a mean dump energy of the original model series. I don't think they sold very well, not that it's really measurable, but we can at least infer that the merchandise sales weren't good enough to get more content made from PBS. Content that possibly could have included the more toy-exclusive characters. But PBS's joint venture, Sprout, would take over JJ's syndication. The Sprout network was intended as a replacement for PBS Kids. PBS Kids as in the 24-hour separate channel, not the early morning block on the main channel or the brand. PBS Kids took the opportunity to team up with Comcast, Sesame Workshop, and HIT Entertainment to distribute as much content as possible with this 24-hour replacement. But out of a combination of legal factors, Comcast acquired full ownership of the Sprout network in 2013 and rebranded it to Universal Kids, as Comcast also owns NBC Universal. But on the contrary, PBS would relaunch a proper 24-hour PBS Kids TV station in 2017, still on the air today. But regardless, all of these companies were dumping just about everything they actively utilized their syndication rights for on Sprout. Although this excludes the PBS-created JJ's Mysteries miniseries / season 4 whatever. I don't know if it was a distribution complication or having to do something with the limited episode count, but there is currently no proof that JJ's Mysteries ever aired on Sprout. Early Sprout promotional material features the protagonist of all of the shows that were first syndicated on the network in its infancy, and these promotional pieces look like Pooh's Adventures. And what do you know, Thomas and JJ are together. Cats and dogs living under the same roof, punk. But JJ's syndication would span multiple programming blocks, the first of which was Musical Mornings, dedicated to musical-oriented shows, intending to start your preschooler's day in an upbeat manner. Oh yeah, I forgot, JJ had musical numbers, only on occasion because I forgot, because they suck.
Eat a chum as sweet as they come. I want a bubble gum.
But even if a special occasion, still cliche crap. The second was the birthday show, which was actually just a temporary programming block to simply just be a commemoration release to the 1-year anniversary of the Sprout Network. Taking the opportunity to educate young viewers on the concept of a birthday and years and whatnot, you know, time. Now, there was even an event on the website where kids could get their network anniversary artwork showcased, like the Arthur interstitial bits.
Said Mom.
Here's one by Mason, based on JJ's design, as well as Tracy alongside Angelina, the ballerina, and Nadi, I'm pretty sure. The host of this block was Kevin, portrayed by Kevin Yadama, who was a well-received enough host to appear on a semi-permanent programming block that also featured JJ, which was the Sunny Side Up show, hosted by Chica, a chicken puppet. Pat, I think you're gonna need to come out of retirement to explain this one.
Pizza?
Speaking of the and shows, JJ also appeared on the Let's Go show block, starring Miles and his puppy puppet Banjo, traveling the world while encouraging the child's viewers to ask questions about the world around them. The final Sprout programming block that happened to syndicate JJ was March Menu, which was hosted by the cast of Sprout Diner.
Come in, come on, are you looking for a bite? If you want to eat smart, this is where you start. Just bring your appetite, because at Brussels Sprouts Diner, we're gonna feed you right.
Sprout Diner was initially a web series exclusive to the Sprout website in 2006 and 7 and intended to introduce the concepts of healthy eating habits, starring the self-titled Sprout family operating their diner. The Sprout family included Brussel the grandfather, Bean the mother, and Alfalfa the daughter. But the characters eventually got their shot on TV as programming block hosts, with the exclusive interstitial content featuring the hosts fulfilling an order from a Sprout syndicated show protagonist.
Hello, Sprout Diner. Glad to have you on the liner. Oh, hiya. Dad, it's the Boobas. What can we get you? Sprout Diner, Bean speaking.
Hey, fool. I've had a long day of bullying Steven Universe fans into attempt suicide.
Sprout Diner, Beanerini here. What can I do for you today?
Hi, Bean. I'd like to order some food to fuel me up so I can fly through the sky.
One healthy snack, zooming right up.
And that includes JJ, and in his bit he orders a chicken salad in the shape of an airplane. So he's a fucking cannibal. Fantastic. Oh no, wait, hold on. Chicken? Oh my god, they killed Chica, you bastard! JJ would end syndication on Sprout in 2008. But like I said, Christian dubs kept getting made until at least 2010. And I bring this ongoing selling out to a Christian audience because it eventually got the attention of a name that'll ring the bell for some of you for all the wrong reasons. The Trinity Broadcasting Network, which is probably the most well-known American Christian TV company / station, and the host of the TBN channel had a 24-hour children's subsidiary named Smile of a Child, which, much like JJ, is notorious amongst the people that watched it back in the day. And assuming Smile of a Child was a Sprout competitor, we gotta remember Sprout was a joint venture between various networks that produced content for this target demographic. You know, it's a 24-hour kids network, you know, we gotta keep as many shows as possible in the syndication lineup to fulfill that 24-hour mandatory deadline and whatnot. So TBN figured, why not make a 24-hour free Christian kids network. So TBN just got the syndication rights for just about every Christian kids show ever. Some shows are only alleged to have aired on Smile, and plenty are extensively documented, but regardless, if you saw a weird Christian show you can't exactly put your finger on in the 2000s-ish, then it probably aired here. The majority of Christian shows are weird and cheaply made. So there was an entire network of mostly shoestring budget Christian shows that nobody liked. And because most Christian shows in the streaming era don't even air on Christian networks to my knowledge, all the new Christian shows went to streaming, as there are a ton of Christian kids streaming services. So Smile of a Child, on top of airing crap, would also be airing vintage crap.
I know you're upset. We all are. But Jeannie, why did Grandpa have to die? Well, he's not really dead, Eugene. Just don't think of him as being dead. Well, he is dead, Jeannie. He's not alive anymore. Now, wait a minute. His spirit is alive. His spirit? Yes. You see, inside of each and every one of us, there is a spirit. And Grandpa has a spirit. And because he had life in his spirit with Jesus Christ, Grandpa went to heaven.
And the farther away from 2005 we got, the more uncanny valley discovery it became to the general public. Now, I didn't watch this network growing up. I discovered it in 2023. But, hey, JJ had Christian dubs. It's weird, it's bad, it's from the mid-90s. So why not start airing JJ the Jet Plane in 2021 on our children's network that nobody gives a rat's ass about anymore? JJ is perfectly on brand with the rest of Smile of a Child, and that is 100% an insult. I'm pretty sure Smile would have aired the Christian dub and not the standard because it's a Christian network. Unsurprisingly, I could not find any TV recordings of JJ the Jet Plane airing on Smile in the early to mid-2020s to confirm which version was regularly airing, although the vast majority of Smile programs were syndicated religious shows. But there was some non-religious programming, which included acquired programming from PBS, which may or may not include JJ. Allegedly, there was a syndication policy that it didn't strictly have to be religious, but it had to be very safe. You know, something you'd find in a Christian show that treats kids like complete idiots. If it was close enough, I guess it was allowed. And that PBS acquired programming included the Dooley and Pal show, which also had a Christian dub, which was subtitles as Christian Ministry, the Zula Patrol, Rags, Bros Think They Hoop Dogs, Curiosity Quest, not to be confused with the company that made the OG JJ series, and of course My Bedbugs, which was far more recognized for its kind of reboot the Oogie Loves in the Big Balloon Adventure, which is widely considered to be one of the worst movies ever made, myself included. Like, think about it, there's gotta be some poor bastard that was forced to watch JJ the Jet Plane in the early to mid-2020s. That doesn't sound real, but it most likely is, because that kid is probably watching this video like 13 years from now. Like, what kid is gonna want to watch this in the early 2020s? Yes, it's bad CG, but it's not a nursery rhyme with, like, rainbows and the pregnancy fetishes and whatnot. Well, it's because TBN actually wanted to reboot the property with the use of the Trilogy Animation Group, aka the animation division of TBN, in which Trilogy owns Porchlight, which owns JJ. Porchlight was acquired by Trilogy in 2018, so I guess Trilogy's boss TBN took full advantage of the syndication rights. Trilogy is most notable for making the 2019 revival series The VeggieTales Show. But, ladies and gentlemen, here's the reboot, The Adventures of JJ the Jet Plane, and let's address the elephant in the room once again. The team actually listened to decades of criticism from all ages about the repulsive character anatomy. Each character is actually pretty super distinguishable. You can tell who's who despite some significant changes. Like, Tracy isn't just JJ but pink. Snuffy has the biggest redesign, but you can still tell it's the Millhouse plane with a big stupid poop nose. On July 28th, 2022, a trailer would release on Trilogy's website, but the website section devoted for promotional material was shortly taken down after. What we can confirm about the project is that the two main voice actors, Debbie Derryberry and Sandy Fox, would return. Currently, there is nothing to suggest a return of characters Herky and Old Oscar. However, a new cast addition, Ricky Rescue, seems to be a replacement for Herky. Brenda Blue would also make a return, but not in live action. There were very few promotional pieces released in 2022, and I'm writing this in 25. So it's safe to assume it was cancelled, and yeah, I don't think we missed out on much. But the only improvement to the show we can infer is that it fixed the flaw of atrocious and repulsive art direction, which was probably a product of nobody giving the show a legitimate chance, because no one really criticizes the actual show outside of the character anatomy. But to my surprise, the show is inexcusably bad as well. The character anatomy is just one of the issues. There's still nothing to suggest what the main educational objective of the reboot was. One of the biggest issues with the previous interpretations, like we can't just have the characters do whatever, like this is supposed to be an educational show. If it got finished and was released, I don't think anyone would remember it a few years later. It might be like a hate bandwagon on like cartoon Twitter for a weekend or something, maybe a couple Go Animate rants.
Bubble guppies? More like butthole slappies.
But if you were gambling on the JJ the Jet Plane Gets Grounded economy, then no, you're smoking crack under a bridge probably.
I want to go to McDonald's.
And why? Well, because at the end of the day, the unintentionally disturbing nature was the only identity JJ ever had. So without the weirdo Jeffrey Dahmer shit, it's just kind of filler. Look, I am all for reboots of bad shows. It's a perfect opportunity to course correct and not technically a cash grab unless it's like super hated. From what we can infer about the presumably cancelled reboot, the New Adventures of JJ the Jet Plane only course corrected one thing, which I don't think was enough for it to justify its existence. And eventually that clearly became the consensus under TBN or whoever was considering making the show, because the subsidiary webpage is now down and we haven't seen it and it's been close to 3 years. It's not even something anyone at the company even bothered to give the time of day to even officially cancel. Look, maybe it'll be out in like 2030 or something, I don't know, I kinda doubt it, but regardless, it's a children's franchise that you know is bad just by looking at it, but if you give it a chance, it's even shittier than you could have imagined.
If I missed somewhere. The irony. Helen would